Yo, what up, everybody? This is your boy Shrap. I'm starting this channel to focus on investing in disruptive technologies by suggesting you companies that are about to change our future and our lives. I'll try to educate you, bring you my research and analysis so that you guys can make your own sound investing decisions. But please do know that I'm not a financial advisor and everyone should be doing their own due diligence. The stock that I'm going to be presenting to you today is Canadian Solar, ticker symbol CSIQ. Let me start off by giving you a brief overview of this company. Canadian Solar is in fact one of the world's largest producers of solar photovoltaic cells, a provider of solar energy storage solutions, as well as one of the largest solar power plant developers globally. So, as you can see, they're involved with all aspects of solar energy, all the way from manufacturing of solar cells, modules, and inverter to developing and operating solar power plant across the world. And therefore, they are a highly vertically integrated company, something which I personally look upon very positively in a company. Not only they're just vertically integrated, but they're also very diverse in terms of their operation and services, which span across the entire globe. You can see from the chart, they are pretty evenly spread across the major regions of the world, with almost equally large presence in China, North America, and Europe, which is pretty amazing. They have delivered over 52 gigawatt of solar modules to customers in more than 150 countries, enough to meet the green energy demand of approximately 13 million households, again, which is very impressive. The Canadian solar business is split into two different groups. One is CSI Solar, which primarily operates in China, and the other being Global Energy, which includes their operation all across the world, excluding China. Their business structure right away shows you the importance and significance of China to their business operations, that they have dedicated an entire business unit to Chinese operation alone. Also, in my opinion, this positions them very well to cater to Chinese market, which undoubtedly has a huge growth potential in renewable energy sector, with their target to reach carbon neutrality by 2060. And if you know anything about the Chinese government, they pursue their target very aggressively. Now let's talk about why I am so bullish on the stock and the huge growth potential of Canadian solar. To understand the growth potential of Canadian solar and why I am so bullish on the stock, one has to look at the future growth potential of renewable energy and solar energy in particular, as Canadian solar plays in this space. It is no secret to anyone that there has been a huge push towards renewable energy by all major economies. Japan, US, and European Union have all committed to be carbon neutral by 2050. And let me be very clear that this cannot happen without massive push from solar energy sector, even when you account for all the other renewable energy sources. The one thing is abundantly clear that to meet renewable energy demand of the future, solar industry will need to see massive growth in coming years and decades. I will show you two charts to show why this will be the case. First, in this chart, you can see the cost of solar energy is lowest compared to all the other energy sources, be it renewable energy or non renewable energy. And what is more dramatic is how significantly this cost has fallen in just over a decade, which in itself is incredible. Now, the second chart reaffirms the fact that solar energy is on the cusp of massive growth. As you can see, the market share of solar energy is made 3%. This shows that the world and the infrastructure has not caught up to the massive decline in energy production costs from solar energy. But this won't be the case for too long, and you will see exponential growth in solar energy sector very soon. Another point to note is that coal still produces 36% of energy production globally, and coal being one of the worst pollutant, it will surely see a huge decline in coming years, only to be overtaken by solar energy. Lastly, if you have any more doubts over the unprecedented growth of solar industry, I will present you with this third graph, which shows that in order to meet the Paris Climate Agreement goal, the production of photovoltaic cell needs to increase to 14,000 gigawatt, up from the current level of 780 gigawatt in 2020. And this represents an annual growth rate of approximately 56%, a huge opportunity for Canadian solar to tap into. Now that we have established that solar energy is poised for unprecedented growth, the next question to ask is naturally if Canadian solar can capture that growth. The next two charts will show you how good of a position Canadian solar is to dominate the market. In the first chart, you can see Canadian solar has the third highest market share of photovoltaic cell manufacturing, and the second chart shows that the top 10 solar companies account for 70% of the market share, which has only been going up over time. And I expect these companies, especially Canadian Solar, to dominate the solar industry in the future as well. Prove my thesis that Canadian solar has the ability to grow massively in the future, let us look at their past performances. You can see in this chart that the solar module shipment of Canadian Solar saw a 30% growth in 2020 and a massive 65% growth is expected in 2021. These are a huge number for a company with only 2 billion in market cap. Last but not the least, I want to talk about Canadian Solar's energy storage business, which I feel will also see enormous growth in the future as it goes hand in hand with the production of renewable energy. Canadian Solar is a relatively new player in battery energy storage space, but I'm really glad that they're getting into this business. And you can already see both CSI Solar, which is Chinese side of the business, and Global Energy has big energy storage projects in pipeline. 7,000 megawatts for CSI Solar and 17,000 megawatts for Global Energy. And I feel like this will be a highly profitable area of business in the future. Now let's talk about Canadian Solar's financials. Having growth potential is one thing, but companies' finance and valuation also need to make sense to make it worth buying. And this is where Canadian Solar truly shine with a really attractive valuation. If you look at the chart here, you can see that revenue of Canadian Solar was approximately 3.5 billion last year, and their market cap is only around 2.25 billion. So can you actually believe their market cap is less than their revenue, which makes for their price to sales ratio to be zero point 0.6. And for those who do not know, price to sales ratio, the less is always better. And how many companies out there in this market can claim to have price to sales ratio of less than 1? Go look at your favorite stock on Yahoo Finance and see if their price to sales ratio is less than 1 or greater than 1. Now for comparison, let's look at another popular solar stock, Enphase Energy. You can see their price to sales ratio is 25 compared to zero point 0.6 for Canadian Solar. This means that for every dollar they make in revenue, you have to pay $25 to buy the stock, compared to only 60 cents for Canadian Solar. Now, you guys tell me, if you were buying a company which was making $1 in revenue, would you rather pay $25 for it or 60 cents for it? Now, if you look at another solar competition in Jinko Solar, you can see they actually even have lower price to sales ratio than Canadian Solar. But here is the catch. All those sales don't mean nothing if you aren't making a profit out of it, which is represented by PE or price to earning ratio. And this is where Canadian Solar triumphs once again, as its forward PE ratio is only $11 compared to $15 for Jinko Solar. Therefore, let me ask you guys the same question again. If you were buying a company which was making annually $1 in profit, would you rather pay $10 for it or would you rather pay $15 for it? I think for me personally, I would go for the cheapest, most profitable company of the three, which is Canadian Solar. I mentioned before an attractive PE and PS ratio for Canadian Solar based on their current earnings and revenues. And if we look at the chart, we see another growth story as analysts predict the earnings to grow by almost 4 times to 250 million US dollars in 2024 from their current value of 58 million US dollars. And since there's a strong correlation between revenue and stock price, I will not be surprised to see stock price increase proportionally to match the earnings growth, unless, of course, the company dilutes the shares by releasing more stocks. This next graph strengthens the argument that Canadian Solar offer an attractive valuation as it shows Canadian Solar stock has both higher profit margins and returns compared to its peers since 2017. Now, to have a measured and balanced view of the stock, we can't just look at the rosy picture and upsides only. We also have to look at risks and potential downsides as well. The most obvious risk that stand out to me is the high debt of this company. And to put this debt into perspective, we need to look at debt to equity ratio, where equity is total assets minus total liabilities of a company. And we see in this graph that debt is indeed higher than equity, so that's not a good thing, and that is something to watch out. However, we also need some historical context to this debt to equity ratio. And we can see from this graph that company debt is actually decreasing over past few years while their equity is rising. And for me personally, they're both trending in the right direction. So even if debt to equity ratio is currently high, I think in the long term it will even out and settle down. And I think management is dealing with it in a very competent way. Another risk factor to consider is their operating and capital expenses, which usually hurt companies' margin. And you can see that their OPEX and CAPEX has gradually been increasing over time, with year 2021 expecting to see biggest growth. However, this is expected because they are also growing their operations at similar rate as well. Again, since Canadian Solar operates and manages physical infrastructure across the world, it takes much greater effort for them to remain lean in their operations, and any mismanagement can hurt their margins significantly. Therefore, they have much less room for error. Again, this is something that you should consider as an investor. In conclusion, I would say personally I'm very bullish on the stock in the long term. Obviously, in the short term, price action is a bit uncertain, especially with market being at all-time highs. So if we see an overall dip in the market, we might also see a dip in the stock as well. But to me, that just presents another buying opportunity at these price levels. However, in 5 year time, I can easily see the stock going over $100, which is approximately 300% return or three times the present value of the stock. But just be aware that no YouTuber can predict the price with full certainty, and things might change in the future for the company. So everyone should be proactive and do their own research and their own due diligence before buying into the stock. And also, for full disclosure, I am invested in this stock. In fact, this stock constitutes 10% of my portfolio, which is one of my largest investment. So if you like my video and analysis and would like to see more videos on similar disruptive growth companies, please hit a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you in my next video. Peace.